Good afternoon, or whatever time of the day it is at your location. We're glad you are joining us today for our Yana Pick-Me-Up. Today I am going to talk to you on a topic that is not one that we generally talk about. What I am going to speak on today is revenge as a forgiveness tool with a question mark. Marianne mentioned last week the kingdoms of consciousness and that we move back and forth between all of them. And the first one being that we're a victim basically of everything, that everything happens to us until we understand that with God, and we are with God, things happen through us. When we're in a position of wanting to take revenge on someone, we're coming from the lowest level of consciousness. But having said that, each one of us move back and forth between the four kingdoms many times during the day. And there have been times in my life when I spent a great deal more time in the first kingdom of believing that things happen to me than I did believing that with God all things are possible. And one of those times in my life when I felt like everything was happening to me was when I divorced my first husband, who is the father of my children. And I was very angry, very afraid, and revenge was one of the things that I thought about. And what I said to many people and wished was that he got what I thought he deserved in his next relationship. And he actually got a whole lot worse than I even thought he deserved. And so I spent the next 15 years feeling guilty. That didn't really do me any good or doing anybody else any good. Confucius said, or it's a Proverb 1, depending on the source you find it at, before you embark on the journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. Revenge is something that isn't really a spiritual practice, but there are times when we're so stuck in the anger, the fear, the blame, the resentment, that we can't get beyond the appearance of what's happened around us. And it keeps us so deep in the stuff that we don't know what to do. And we think of all levels of revenge. Maybe this is our inner child that feels like they have been hurt or knows that they have been hurt, and they want a way to get back. It may not be our inner child as much as it's our inner teenager who wants to get even with whoever hurt us. When we're in this place, we contemplate all kinds of stuff. But as I've said, with what happened to me, I shared with several people that, I really would like to see my ex have some really nasty relationships. And what I found was I didn't feel any better when the revenge came to pass. I felt bad about myself. This is some of the reasons revenge doesn't work. It was the first one, I didn't feel any better. I felt worse. And it was over a very long period of time. It wasn't just, oh, wow, I feel bad that this happened. I'm not kidding. I really felt guilty for a lot of years. I learned guilt from my mother, who was a master at it. And it's taken me a lot of years to move beyond it. But in this particular thing, this particular time, it lowered my self-esteem and lowered my self-worth, which was already in the pretty low to begin with. And my need for revenge was something I would afraid would hurt my children's relationship with their father. I was very clear that my children had not divorced their father, that I had divorced their father, and that I needed to do whatever I needed to do to create a space where my children and their father could have a relationship that was as positive as they could make it. It was my fear and anger and not my children's. And as I said, my actions were based on fear and anger. And this is not, and that's the fourth thing. And when your actions are based on fear and anger, you're not coming from a very high level of confidence. And my impulse was really for him to hurt as bad as I had hurt. And I felt confused and scared and concerned about my future, my children's future. And when I was coming from confusion and concern, it was difficult for me to do the things I needed to do for our best outcome for all of us. I was not being my best self. I was not coming from my highest place. I was not coming from the highest state of consciousness. I was not coming from a place where forgiveness would allow all of us to experience a much healthier life. And it took me a while to get there. This divorce happened many years before I began what I call my spiritual journey. It happened many years before I even had any idea what deep spiritual forgiveness was. So I had to stumble through and work through a lot of stuff. And truly, the spiritual perception and the spiritual perspective and forgiveness would have been a much better course of action, where I would have been able to view him with compassion and view myself with compassion. I would like to blame our divorce on him, and there are probably times when I did. But I know that it takes two to have a relationship, and that part of the things that happened were as much my fault or more than his. And being able to see that from the distance would have helped a lot at that time. So what do we do when we're in that space where we want to get revenge or affect revenge on someone? The first thing to do is to pause and to take a deep breath and to mentally step back from the situation and to see what each one of us is feeling in the situation and what we're thinking, and realize that our thoughts may not be in our best interest. And then we again take another deep breath and take time to consider what would be a better action. And also, if we're thinking about revenge, take time to consider what happens in the consequences of the actions that we might take. The second thing is we need to get out of the story. Yes, we've been hurt. Yes, we're angry. Yes, somebody did us wrong, or we feel like they did us wrong. But instead of focusing on the story itself, focus on what I'm feeling. Focus on what you're feeling. See what the feelings are. Does your head hurt? Does your stomach hurt? Your neck, your back, your face? What's hurting? Where are you holding your pain? Do you feel these physical feelings within you? And when you go back to the story, scan your body again and see where the physical feelings show up, and can continue to concentrate on them and to begin to take steps to reduce them. The third step can be very hard in the midst of what is going wrong. And that is to step back and begin to see the other person's side of the story and where they are coming from. Think about what may be going on in their life. This can also help you get out of your story, and it can help you get to a place where you don't react as negatively to the story. What's the other person going through? Are they just having a bad day? Do they have something major going on in their life, and is it a difficult time? And this whole process is about you feeling better, and it's not about letting them off the hook. It is about you taking a personal high road for your best interest in a difficult time and a painful situation. Fourth, after you've looked at the story from somebody else's point of view, ask yourself, what is the most compassionate thing I can do for myself and the other person? Can we have a conversation and talk it out? In the situation of the divorce from my husband at that time, talking it out would not have been possible. The compassionate thing for us truly was to end the relationship and both of us go our separate ways while creating a situation that was the best that it could be for our children. And fortunately, we both wanted something that was good for our children, so that made it a little easier. Fifth, what can I do to support and respect myself in the situation? As I said, I knew the marriage was over and I had to stop holding on and be willing to move in my life. The divorce was something that wasn't done in my family. I actually went to a counselor at one point, and he asked me what marriage meant to me. And I said, to death do us part. And he asked me a very wise question. And the question was, what is death? And I knew when he asked me the question that my marriage was dead. So the death do us part had happened. And it was time to move on to something else. It was time for me to take the steps necessary to protect myself and my children. One of the things I did was my ex-husband had run a business out of our garage, and he had it so packed with parts and pieces that I had not been able to park my car in the garage the entire time we were married. In fact, when we were first married and when I was pregnant, he parked his MG in our one-car garage, and I had to scrape ice in the winter. And it was no better through this time. So one of the first things I did after he moved out, and he didn't take all his business stuff with him, was I cleared a path big enough in the garage that I could actually park my car in it, so I didn't have to scrape the windshields and the window in the winter. This may not seem like a big deal to you, but it was really big to me. And the last one is, what is the most loving thing I can do for myself? And in this case, it was, what could I do for myself and my children? And the biggest thing I could do was not run down their dad to the children. I didn't need to tell the children what he had done that had finally ended the marriage. I didn't need to go around saying bad things at him. I didn't need to go around being continuously angry at him. My children, when we divorced, were 4 and 9. So they were pretty young. And I really had to watch how I expressed my feelings. I'm sure I didn't do as good a job as I would like to think I did, but I did a fairly decent job. I think that was probably the most compassionate thing I did at the end of our marriage. There were several things I thought about doing that I chose not to do and took a higher space. One of them would have been to sell the boat he loved so much. And I really, really considered doing that, but I didn't. Might have had something to do that my name wasn't on the title. It would have been hard to sell. But it was, sometimes we just feel like we have to do, that we want to do something. But it's better to take the high road and to do something different. to try to be as compassionate as possible. Approaching a difficult situation from your highest self pays off in the long run. It isn't easy and it takes work, but it's worth the effort. So, okay, we say it's best to take the high road, but what if you're in a position where you can't? What if you're in a position where you feel like you absolutely have to do something to take revenge on this person? I will tell you that I cannot find anywhere in my Ernest Holmes books where he ever mentions the word revenge. And I didn't find any in Raymond Charles Barker that I have either. So we as New Thought participants generally do not do revenge. But occasionally we may feel it's necessary. And I actually found an exercise by, of all people, Louise Hay, on how to do revenge. So I'm going to take you through this process. And what I want you to do is to get comfortable in your chairs and close your eyes. And I want you to get a plate. Jane, not quite yet. I'll do that in a minute. Okay. So just get comfortable. And just breathe in and breathe out a few times. And from this place of calmness, I want you to begin to think about that person or situation that has hurt you the most, or who you're having the hardest time forgiving. And just bring that person into your mind. What did they do to you? And what would you like to see happen to them? How long would you like them to suffer? And what would it do to you for self-punishment? And what would they have to do for self-punishment? What would they need to do for you to forgive them? See and feel them doing it right now. How do you see them doing what you need them to do for you to forgive them? And as they do what you need them to do, let it go and let go of this situation forever. This honors that little kid part of us that needs revenge. And now let it go forever. And Jane, put the affirmations up, please. Now I want you to say this affirmation, the first one. I now forgive the name of the person, situation, that I now forgive for the situation. I now forgive this person for this situation. Fill in the blanks with your person and your situation. And I want you to say this 10 times. I now forgive for. 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 And now I want you to forgive yourself. I now forgive myself for, and the situation that happened. I now forgive myself for. 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 The recommendation is the first time that you do these affirmations for 5 minutes, and then do them every day for several days, both of them. And if these affirmations don't work for you, I also suggest my favorite affirmation, which is the name of the person, place, or thing. I love you, I bless you, I forgive you, and I release you to your highest and best good. Okay, Jane, you can let go of that, please. Okay. I had a couple of really good quotes on revenge. Frank Sinatra said, "The best revenge is massive success." And your best revenge is being the best you at whatever is important to you and living a happy, productive, fulfilling life. And moving on to a need for revenge allows you to achieve this. So, as I said, the best revenge is to live the best life possible. And the need for revenge should never be enough to keep you from living a healthy, whole, vibrant life. So hopefully this small exercise in revenge and forgiveness will help you move beyond whatever has had you stuck in this area. And thank you so much for listening.